George has it, but other than that, it's going to be fine.
On that note, I will call to order the Finance Committee meeting for February 18th, 2020. The meeting is being both recorded and broadcast live. May I get an approval of the agenda?
Move approval of the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And now I'll open the floor to public comment. And the chair recognizes Judith Wagner. Hi, Judith.
Hi, greetings, colleagues. Thanks to your chair for meeting with me to talk about this as well as a variety of other matters. I'm here to ask you to take in a bit more information and to reconsider the position you took on this particular article about swimming pools at a prior meeting. My colleague Fritz McClure, who's principal drafter of this and mover behind this initiative, is here to comment and offer answers to questions as well. I want to make three main points. First, the nature of this proposal specifically, it's very, very different from the one last year, and I want to be sure you understand that. It is really geared to areas that are within the Village Residential District, R1, SR1, R5, R5L, and it sets a minimum lot area that would be necessary if you want to put in a swimming pool of 7,500 square feet, and it would have a setback of 10 feet both on the side and the rear of lots. It would also take effect after September 30, 2020, so there's time for people if they want to move and proceed with the swimming pool rather than having them caught unawares. Why we have spent a year and a half working on this, talking about this at length. I know some of you went back and we appreciated that you looked at part of our most recent prior meeting, but I need to be sure you know we've been talking about it for a year and a half, so there's a lot more background than you may have seen in that short snippet. There are many more swimming pools that have been going up on the island. Most of those are in the more rural areas, the LUG 2 or 3 areas rather than in these areas designated that are closer to town. We're worried about stormwater runoff because if you've got a increasing presence on a lot whereby you've got structures that keep stormwater from running in, you're causing drainage issues that mean that the water's going someplace else. Draining of swimming pools. I know many people leave covers over their pools for periods of time, but we've been getting input from people saying that there are people draining pools sometimes out onto nearby roads or other people's property. There's noise and light issues. We've heard a lot of concerns voiced by neighbors who are affected by that. The areas we're dealing with here are primarily the historic areas closest to designated historic district areas. And we also think that by having this kind of build out, we're losing places that are close to town and close to the core that could be and have been historically used for year-round housing. So as I said, that's what this proposal is and why it's very different from last year in that last year the proposal was to redefine ground cover to include swimming pools as part of ground cover that would have affected areas throughout the island. Also would have had broader perimeter requirements around swimming pools and would have prohibited swimming pools in much wider swaths of the island, particularly included would have been country areas, more remote areas like LUG 2 and 3. So the third point is, as I said, the process, we have looked at this closely. This was a unanimous recommendation of our board. We went through a number of different approaches and gradually narrowed down to this one, which is much more limited than it had been in previous years. We looked at a good deal of data. We didn't undertake a survey of property owners because it was a very different proposal than in prior years, much more targeted to a very limited area of the island, but one that we've had a lot of conversations. And as you know, we're elected, so different ones of us have been out and about talking to people during campaigns and otherwise. And really felt that we learned a lot by our discussions within the group. We have people with different backgrounds there, including people who are realtors as well as lawyers, as well as with different backgrounds working here, living here a very long time. So we would just say that we hope that you would take that into account. If you feel you still don't want to endorse it, we would ask you to take no action. Fritz, do you want to add anything?
Thank you, Judith.
Fritz McClure, Planning Board. Just briefly, I think it's important to understand one simple fact. Last year, this was a citizen's petition. This year, this is an article that's brought by the Planning Board with 100% of support of the Planning Board. This provision article was developed by the Planning Board with everybody's input and has 100% support of every member of the Planning Board. And I think that really ought to have some bearing on the position that you would take in terms of a recommendation on this, that it is an elected board, 100% of the members are behind this. Thank you.
Is there any further public comment on this? Okay, do we have any questions from the members of FinCom?
I do. And just a point of clarification about the final version of the article that was voted on by the planning board last year. Wasn't that subject to Fritz's amendment, which reduced the scope down to just the R1 area?
Fritz, no, I don't think that's correct. We never got that far because he changed it. There was a fair amount of outcry, you may remember, a lot of public testimony against it. So we deliberated about whether to withdraw it or how to handle it, but it wasn't really at all refined in the degree that this is currently. Do you want to say more about that? Okay.
That doesn't match up with what I saw on the tape. Fritz stood and recommended that you review a smaller scope of the article, which removed ground cover from consideration and removed a number of zones and limited it just to the R1 zone. And even still, the planning board said, we really ought to poll the neighbors.
Let me see if I can roll back that far. He talked about different ways to refine it, but at the end of the day, we felt there wasn't enough support for any kind of approach that would in fact work to refine it at that point. I honestly don't remember that we made a commitment that we were going to poll the neighbors because we weren't down to a particular, the board, as I recall, had not focused on which of a number of different areas or districts might in fact have been the best way to go with this, and it took a whole lot more conversation before we came down to something as firm as what we've come up with here. I don't know if anybody else, Andrew or Leslie, has a better recollection of that, but ultimately the board took no action on it, as you know. I'm sorry if I'm not being responsive, but that's the best of my memory of it.
No, I think that's fine that that's your memory of it. But I would say that if you go back and review it could have been the second or maybe the third meeting where you discussed this last year.
This was before the 2019 meeting?
This was before the 2019 meeting.
Before
Right, so the totality or the scope of the article that was discussed at that point, before the planning board voted unanimously to take no action, I think was what you decided to do last year, with the comment that before any pool bylaw changes are made, that some effort be made to poll the public. And so before that comment was discussed and before it was ratified, the scope of the article by the sponsor was narrowed to just be R1, and all of the discussion of ground cover, perimeter, the 20-foot setback, all of that was taken out. And replacing that was the provision that pools in R1 be granted by special permit only, which would have given the planning board purview over things like light and sound and all those things.
All I can tell you is my firm recollection is we never came to some kind of considered judgment about what would happen next. It was in the context, as Fritz said, of citizen article, so the board was not saying we opt for that approach. We simply heard his thoughts, we heard citizens' thoughts, and said we do more study on it. And I honestly don't think, as far as I was concerned, I didn't vote to say that there would be some kind of a survey, because it's a very different scale.
I don't think there was a commitment, at least that I saw in the meetings, that there would be a survey, but there was the comment that you all supported that said, before we make changes to the pool regulations, we will do some public outreach.
Well, I think we've done outreach, but it's not a survey. But I don't mean, I may be out of time here, I don't mean to be out of order.
It's a comment you sent me.
Right. More study, public outreach, and consideration was the phraseology. But again, and I think this point's really important, so I'll repeat it. When it was apparent that there wasn't support from the board for the initial proposal, and based on the comments, Fritz, that you heard at the FinCom meeting specifically, you went back and revised the proposal and asked the planning board to consider your new version, where you had initially 7 changes that you wanted to make. You narrowed that down to 2, prohibit pools in MMD, and pools in R1 were to be granted by special permit only. So we'd taken out all the things that you just listed that makes this year's proposal so different from last year's. All of those were stripped out in the version that he, as the sponsor, asked the board to consider. And then the board said, no, this really was met with such public disapproval that we need to do more work on it before we do even that. And then what we have this year actually applies, at least in my estimation, it applies to more properties. And it says no, whereas the old one said special permit.
The board did not pick up on last year's proposal as the way that it framed its work this year. It wasn't really that they were taking a citizen initiative and going to carry on from the way that was left off. That particular meeting, I believe I was stuck in Hyannis because of a health matter, so I was listening in. I wasn't there in person. It's the February meeting, as I recall. I think that the sense of the board was, we, just as you are doing here today, you're facing deadlines about what to do with articles for town meeting, and that we decided that we weren't prepared to go forward with something as fundamentally different as what had originally been proposed, and that we do more work on it. That didn't expressly say there'd have to be a survey, and as best I can tell you, the board really looked at this in its own terms and did a good deal of homework and a good deal of outreach. If you feel like that's insufficient, that's your judgment to make.
Okay.
Thank you. Further questions? Andrew?
I just wanted to address that point, and I think I hear where you're coming from, Stephen. It's important to realize, though, that that article submitted last year was much broader. It had multiple concepts in it, and the board heard testimony where people, there was the idea that it should be narrowed down that came from Mr. McClure. The board heard testimony from everybody saying, well, that's a good idea to consider in the future, but we can't move forward under this article because it had been advertised a certain way and because it still could have been passed with the ground cover considerations and other things that people were worried about. Do you remember that?
I do, and that was definitely a concern that was expressed by some people, but there also seemed to be at least the beginnings of some support from attorneys who were present that special permit is the right way to go, because there was no objection to the notion that some pools are inappropriate in some places, and light and noise are concerns in some areas and in some cases. And it seems like special permit would have been the way to go. But it was apparent to me and to at least one of your board members that a poll would have been a good way to go. You know, a survey was done in ROH, was done in VR. And what I'm concerned about here is we've got people who, in large part, in some cases, their income is derived from installing pools, and we don't know what they think about it. We don't know what these property owners think about this idea. And you know, raises a level of personal discomfort that I don't know that any more information that's available between now and town meeting is going to solve for me.
Right. I just think there is and I understand that and certainly leave that to your judgment. I just think that the process that brought us here this year was the article we're considering has been the same article from day one, and that's when people show up for the public hearings and give the testimony that they give, as opposed to last year, which
That's
snagged all kinds of other things.
That's a really fair point. And then I guess, some more context for that would be the only public comment that was at those meetings was negative. There wasn't anybody who said, thanks for saving my neighborhood, because it just, and this has come up in some other warrant articles, citizen, albeit not from a town board, but there's a lack of evidence that we're actually addressing a problem. So whereas I do think that this has significant impacts on the assessed value of these properties, on the income that the town would receive, if you want to look at it that way, and on the livelihood of some citizen taxpayers, I think that more outreach ought to have been done.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? What percent of the existing pools would be affected by this? I know it's not affecting them because it's grandfathered, but if this was in effect, what percent of the pools that are established right now would have been in violation?
I'm not sure if I understand that. You're saying compared to the number that
Okay, if there's
currently
100
exists,
pools right now,
there's
900 pools.
There's
in Nantucket.
900 pools in
Okay,
the
how many of them
island.
would be violating zoning procedure based on this new?
This is only forward-looking for
No, I
things.
understand that. I'm trying
So
to figure.
I'm sorry, I don't understand how to answer. I think you're saying if lots currently existing were prohibited from having pools,
How many people have
lots would
pools
that be?
now that wouldn't have been able to have the pool if this had been in effect?
I don't know that I can answer that. Leslie, can you answer that?
I can't answer that now, but I could put together that information possibly.
Let me ask it a different way. What do you anticipate the number of people that would apply for a pool permit that will be violating this going forward? What percentage?
So people who would apply between now and September 30th
Yeah.
so they can get in under the new restrictions, basically.
Well, I'm looking
Or,
after,
and
after.
okay.
Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out how many people this is going to affect. Are we talking about 3 pools a year, or are we talking about 30 pools a year?
I didn't bring with me, I've got a multi-page spreadsheet from the assessor that lists all the pools that exist by existing zoning district, but I don't think that's what you're asking.
No.
We have data indicating certain lot sizes. So out of, let's see, R1 buildable lots, 994, total lots, 959 are buildable. Those that would be above 7,500 square feet, so that they would not be affected by this, is roughly 600 something. So I guess that might mean something in the neighborhood of 200 or 300 potentially. Does that sound remotely correct?
Well, I thought in one of the conversations there were closer to 1,500 lots island-wide that would be forbidden by,
No.
under 7,500.
R5, I was just taking it one district at a time. R5 has 558 buildable lots. Approximately 200 of those would be larger than this provision would apply to, so that leaves 300 some odd lots. I appreciate that you may weigh, your judgment may be that the chance for people to do what they want with their land may trump in some way in terms of your thinking about this. Our board simply says we think there's enough concern about this from what we hear from people generally and so forth that it's a fair topic for town meeting to discuss it. And that it may be that you're right, that people will come out and have hang for the rafters and say, I want my pool. But I can say 2 people spoke against it who were spoke last year compared to, I think, probably 100 that had spoken against the earlier version or had written in last year. I also think that you mentioned, Mr. Maury, that one of the board members was an alternate member of the board. It wasn't one of the elected members who spoke took the view you had that there should be a survey. We think that this affects people broadly. It's not just for the property owners to ask what their preference would be. And we also think that oftentimes when you have surveys in the abstract, it's hard to get a real sense of people listening to their neighbors and hearing what the concerns are. So we felt unanimously, and I think you know who's on our board, and you know we have people with different backgrounds. We felt it was timely to bring it to the town for people to have a discussion about it, and we hope that you would agree with that. So thank you.
Yeah, we don't disagree, Judith, that it can be brought to town meeting floor and discussed. That's absolutely within the purview of the article as it's presented. We're not at all looking to stifle discussion, but we do look at this article differently than you look at the article, as we've talked about, with the different points that Stephen's made and with the rights of people to do what they feel that they should be able to do with their land. We look at that the HDC doesn't allow a pool that is implemented that can be seen from the street. So, and there's noise bylaws, there's lighting bylaws. So when we look at all of those things in balance, we have come to a different conclusion. So just to summarize some of the points.
I think that is an important point, because this point keeps getting brought up about unanimous vote. And, you know, most of us did go back and watch the meeting. We watched actually several of the meetings before that led up to that meeting. And I think the way you characterize it is correct of a lot of the members was, let's bring this to the town meeting floor and have a discussion about it. And I think there was unanimity about that. But our charge is very different. Our charge is not to bring things to town meeting and have a discussion about them. It's to, and I can read to you specifically the language, but it's to thoroughly investigate each one and make a recommendation for or against every article. And further, we don't have the option to take no action because we don't have the option to take an action.
Right.
So, you know, when we are being when it is our responsibility to bring forth a motion, taking no action has real meaning. It means we've decided not to bring it forward. Take no action isn't really appropriate in this case. I suppose what's being asked is maybe we would say that we neither agree or disagree or something, a comment of that. But then I think that wouldn't be doing our job, which is to thoroughly investigate, which I think tons of time has been spent by the members of this board doing just that.
Thank you. Further questions? Any other further comments from the public before I close the public comment section? No? Okay, I will close the public. First day with the new teeth. I will close the public comment section of the meeting, and now we can bring deliberations. So from what you've all heard, is there a motion to, thank you, I have written that word down even. Is there a motion to rescind our earlier motion, understanding that that can only be brought by someone who voted in the affirmative for our prior motion, and it has to pass by 2/3 vote. So that would be 4 people of the, if I'm counting correctly.
And just to be clear, our vote was not to support the planning board on this.
Correct. Okay, thank you. It's closed. We'll stand by our earlier motion. Thank you very much to the chair and to Mr. McClure for being here and presenting us that information. We very much appreciate it. Andrew and Leslie, I think we'll move to the planning articles that we haven't had motions on yet. So then that way we can set you free. We only keep Brian for the whole duration.
So it looks like we have 4 articles.
Yes, correct. That's what I had colored in on my spreadsheet.
Article 44, which is, there was a slight adjustment to the map on this article. This is, Leslie, do we have a map of this?
Nathan's working on it.
Oh, it's okay.
Ally, can you move to Article 4? Thank you.
So this particular property, this is a lot that runs the entire length between Old South Road and Tacoma, and we adjusted the line on that slightly.
Okay,
That was reopened, and the planning board voted affirmatively to make that change.
okay.
So that article is, there was no controversy surrounding that.
Oh, and Leslie, I forgot to say thank you at the beginning for sending out the comments ahead of time for us. That was very helpful. Okay. For the FinCom, any questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion to support?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any further discussion on the motion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Article 58 is the next on my list, which is, this is a citizen article regarding height restrictions. As I had reported the last time I was here, the board took a unanimous vote to oppose this particular article. We have developed a more detailed comment. I do appreciate some of the conversations I had with different people, and wanted to make it clear that this is about 3 stories, not 4 stories under any circumstances. Make sure that's in the record. I want everybody to understand that. That's the specific reason for this article. And again, the maximum at 40 typically means that there's discussion about somewhere between 30 and 40 during the process.
I appreciate that you put that in writing in the comment,
Yes.
that there was some mention of that. Do you think that there's a need, or do you think that you would want to take on putting that somewhere in the bylaw so that that's codified and not disremembered at some point in the future?
Yes, and that's on our list for the fall town meeting.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Questions for Leslie and Andrew on that one? Did everybody get a chance to see their comments? Which I found to be very good. Thank you very much for that. That was very helpful. Any further discussion? Do I have a motion?
Motion to support?
Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Article 60 is next on my list. This is a citizen article entitled Rural Affordable Development. This article is similar to an article that came before town meeting at the last, at the 2019 ATM. And upon review by town council and the town moderator, even though it's not exactly what was submitted at that time, it was found to be similar enough that it basically it raised concern with the planning board. It was clear that extensive modifications to this article from its original format would have been needed. The board felt that they were not willing to do that at this time, and because of its similarity, the motion here was not to adopt. What is clear on this that's a little bit different than the other articles is because this is not reporting out positively, that it can't be called on town meeting floor for further discussion
Okay,
because
interesting.
of that similarity to the last year's article.
It cannot.
Cannot. So, so this, if the proponent wants to pursue this further, they have to wait until the next annual town meeting because it's 2 years from that initial article.
Okay,
Unless it radically changes in a way that's substantially different than this.
thank you. Any further questions for Andrew and Leslie on this?
I guess my only question is, why would the planning board move not to adopt if it's something that couldn't be adopted anyway? Why wouldn't it just be take no action?
They wanted to have a stronger resolution here than just, they do feel that the take no action is more of a passive I guess, statement. It's still, it all works out as being, not being adopted anyway, but the not to adopt was stronger.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Motion to support the planning board?
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay.
Article 64, and this article was not clear to us whether this was in fact zoning or not. It just talks about a regulation coming out of the Plus Department. So in the end, the planning board voted that this not be, or move not to adopt here, because again, there would have to be an actual zoning bylaw change. I think that in general, you've already made some comments on this that I think cover what we talked about, which was it's not necessarily an activity that comes to live in the Plus Department. It's really covered through the DPW, and then there's a specific position. So I think we're pretty consistent on this one, but
Yes.
because this will not need, I don't think this needs, in fact, a planning board lead motion. I think it's really coming from the FinCom.
Yeah, and we ruled at the time, after a lot of discussion, take no action. So, with the comment as to why.
Yeah.
Andrew, quickly, back to 61 and Rick Atherton's.
Oh, okay, yep.
Now, I did get, for the FinCom members' information, I got a email from Rick today stating he was off island. And I told him that we were going through all the planning recommendations today, and that up until now, we have not needed more information from Rick because he's appeared twice before with us on this. So if planning raises an issue such that we would like Rick to come back, then we can bring Rick back, and we won't take a motion today. But I have told Rick that we were intending to, we thought we had the information we needed unless we find out differently in the next 5 minutes. So everyone understands that part. Okay, sorry, Andrew.
That's okay. 61. So I think I skipped over that. So the board developed a comment that hopefully you've had a chance to review.
Yeah.
The issue there, again, is similar to, there were at least 2 earlier articles where the same issues were raised about this article. Again, there's not, while the general, I think, intent of this is good, the connection only back to building permits is not necessarily the best connector. It could affect existing homes that don't get building permits, or people's expectations for properties that are in hazardous areas. In addition, the methodology that he submitted, which was I think we talked about this the last time, the shorefront land, and did they get the map of that particular area?
I think we did. We saw it. It goes way far back. It goes almost back to Alter Rock on one of the properties.
Right. So the a methodology that brings at-risk properties and includes Alter Rock is obviously flawed. So there are several committees, I think, that are looking at coastal hazards and sea level rise and those type of things. And I believe before we act on something like this, number one, it should be supported by town administration. It should probably initiate through that particular avenue. And there clearly has to be some resolution to this, the methodology. And then again, I think there should be some discussion about whether it belongs in a general bylaw or the zoning bylaw alone.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Andrew and Leslie? No? Okay.
Make a motion to support.
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. I saw in your notes that 62 was not a planning article. So Mary Bergman, the 12-month demolition. So
Yes,
she's,
we're continuing to have some discussions about that. And again, our interest in that is because it proposes a certain procedure that would affect our office and specifically our building commissioner.
Okay,
There have been a couple questions that have come up about that article. Number one was whether it could be amended to be zoning in the existing demolition delay bylaw.
okay,
And the answer is no, it cannot. It would be beyond
Okay.
the scope. A second question was, could it be amended to include the historical commission as opposed to the HDC?
okay,
And the answer to that is no. It's also beyond the scope because it would set up a two-tiered review. So we're back to, this would affect the HDC enabling legislation. And they are, I think, still in a discussion phase of whether they want their legislation amended to allow this additional, I guess, activity or, you know, I think as we talked the last time, they have full authority over demolitions now, any
Yes.
demolition.
yes.
Which, I mean, I hope you all understand that that's unheard of in the state. We're way ahead of any community. I mean, if you are a historic preservation advocate, like we are, all demolitions must be approved by them. And they can be simply denied, where you say, you can't demolish that building. So that's different from many communities that don't, they have limited historic districts, and they might have scattered historic buildings that are subject to this demolition delay.
Mary, I've been exchanging emails with Mary. She's at HDC today
Yes.
to go through it again, so she will appear before us on March 2nd.
So I have a question. So Andrew, does that mean that it's within her right or the HDC's right to say if anybody has is proposing demolition that they have to wait 12 months? So it doesn't have to be, it's a guide, it doesn't have to be a rule per se, they have that ability as it is now.
Right, they can say, not even waiting any time, they can say, no, you can't demolish that. That building is too important, too, you know, historic or, you know, thematic, whatever their decision is, to prevent it from being demolished at all.
But I mean, as a committee, like they could say that one of their sort of internal agreements is that for the next year, we're gonna
sure.
we're gonna make a rule that we're gonna delay all demolition 12 months just to see how that might play out.
I think that they could, I don't know that they could say it quite that way, but they could.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they could make a finding that it's important. They could ask for further study,
Okay.
further documentation. They could ask for referrals, you know,
Okay.
from these various committees. What I'm concerned about is specifically, I mean, if this is something you're inclined to support, is the procedure needs to come out because it would be in conflict
Yeah.
with the COA requirement of the HDC now.
Got it.
It almost says
Yep.
you have a
Understood.
time clock, and once the time clock is over, the building can be demolished, and that's completely different than what exists.
Got it.
So,
Thank you.
and not as protective, not in a good way.
Thank you. Further questions for Andrew or Leslie about this? Oh, we're not going to rule on it tonight anyway. We have to wait. Sorry. Okay. Thank you. And then I think that was, I don't have any more waiting for planning on my list. Nope. Nope.
Okay,
Thank you very much, both of you.
thank you.
Now on to sewer. Okay. So I had watched the town meeting last week, or the select board meeting, and the discussion, and as Chris very rightly said earlier tonight, there was a lot of discussion on these articles on the select board. And we also got the rulings from Erica, which I forwarded to all of you. And I felt between the discussion that we watched of the select board and the paperwork that we got in advance, that we did not need to invite David Gray, who is on vacation tonight, to go through all of these articles with us, If anyone's uncomfortable with that, we can, of course, invite him for March 2nd if there's one or two you'd rather have David weigh in on. Otherwise, I think we can review them and go through them one by one. And if we have questions, I'm sure Libby or Jason's here. I love when we can get Jason to participate. So Jason could also weigh in on add further information to our discussion. So, Article 82. So this is a town-sponsored article, and the Select Board approved it. Is there any questions or discussions for Article 82? The concern, to summarize the concern as I remember it, one of the concerns raised that potentially this would make for a more dense development with more bedrooms, and it was raised during the meeting that these are actually going to be quite large lots within this, larger than our zoned for. So it's not going to be developed at its maximum development. And the second issue from Mr. Gray's perspective was that there's currently a privately held sewer at Hydrangea Lane, I think it is. And he was concerned that this is where this one would end up because the Hydrangea Lane is having some challenges with running their own because of the licensing that's required to do so. And then therefore, there could potentially be an effect to the water wells and water table. So Jason, am I getting a thumbs up on that or not? As you remember the discussion broadly.
They're on shared septic, right?
The ones at Hydrangea Lane, yes.
Right. I think it's a
Correct.
private sewer.
Oh, yeah, I meant shared septic. Thank you for the correction. So the Select Board approved. Do I have a motion? Or is there further discussion first? Nope.
Motion to approve.
Okay. I guess it's motion to support the Select
Motion to
Board,
support the
right?
Select Board, okay.
Is it, or do we make the motions there,
Libby?
based on their comment?
You,
I do admit that I in advance drafted a motion.
perfect.
And so it basically is
82.
moving the actual
We're
amendment
making
to
the
the
motion
bylaw.
based
Okay.
on their recommendation.
Okay. So motion to approve.
There is this little note there. I need to have town council review it, but the board had discussed, and this was recommended by the group that undertook the review of the sewer district articles. That I was also going to double check and see what we had last year. The idea was to have a note that rather specifically lays out that this isn't really the town that's going to be extending the sewer necessarily. And if it is extended before the town gets around to doing it, there are some conditions that are going to need to be applied.
Okay, thank you.
So then why did Matt oppose it? Do we know?
I don't remember. I remember watching it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was concerned about the developmental impact.
Yeah, I
Is
think
this the
so.
lot directly next to?
And he made the point
prior
that-
to Hydrangea?
Kind of
That's just one
behind it. And
consideration.
it's surrounded by
You know, it sounds
conservation
like it makes
land.
Been
sense.
for sale a long time?
Hardscaping and other stuff. can
That I don't know.
affect as well.
Been for sale a long time, this lot?
No, I don't believe it's been
No?
for sale long time. I don't even think it's for sale right now.
Oh, okay.
So Joanna made a motion to,
Second? I'll second.
okay, thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay. Then that was 82. Okay, 83, we already voted on in the 6th of January. 84. And Ally, if you just bring up our motion. Okay, so the Select Board did not support this article. This one, you can help me with why not, Jason? or Libby, one of the two.
Again, I think this one was because it wasn't in a needs area.
Right.
And there isn't a planned sewer project there anytime soon. If approved, the individuals could potentially extend their connection with the conditions that I mentioned earlier, but I think in the end, the board just said no. Is there more to it?
I think there was a sewer right next to the property, so it kind of was an easy hookup. I think that's why they put it through. I don't think it was recommended to approve criteria.
No, 84.
Yeah.
Criteria usually
Okay, yeah.
make it 2/3 vote to approve it, not.
Right. Because that area's really gotten developed in the last 2 years especially. I mean, there are probably at least 10 new buildings right there since. So is 18 Kimball, is that the homeowner of some of the newer buildings or? Sorry, do we have a map?
Monday, February 17th.
No, we don't have a map. I don't have it.
Right adjacent to the sewer currently, what would be your thoughts about why not letting them in?
It wasn't in a water protection area, the water, it wasn't in a needs area.
The zone's gotta end somewhere.
Yeah.
Every property's.
Is this
No,
where
you're
this
right.
where Sherburne meets Kimball or something? Is it right there? But 18 would be further into Kimball.
It's the first property on the non-water side of Kimball Avenue that doesn't touch Sherburne Turnpike. Does that make sense? There's one.
But there's a
on the
house
corner.
going in down there that, I mean, I know it is. There's a house going down in that swale. Is that, and that is a Kimball
that's
Ave address,
Sherburne.
but they're building it like, so it's more on the Sherburne side. But I think that's a Kimball address.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that project. I don't know.
Can I just, got a little confusion, because I'm looking at the email yesterday, Monday, February 17th, with the sewer article
From Erica?
from Erica. Mm-hmm. And that one says that this one recommended adding to the sewer district with the above conditions. So is this an old draft?
The one that I have is Monday the 17th.
That might have been the group's recommendation, but the select board didn't follow every single.
Ah, okay, so
Yes,
I'm looking at
yes.
the committee.
Review committee, not sewer
Got it,
commissioners.
okay, that's the confusion, thank you, yeah.
There, like, I think on that email, there was a little section above the reports that said what the board's votes were.
Yes.
Oh, and that one's got all the maps handy.
Oh, okay, no, that's in bullets down below, earlier in the string, I see.
Yeah, the one I sent was the select board. The one I sent was the select board votes,
Yeah.
and 84 was not support.
But I was looking at the attachment, which is the committee report, which.
Oh, I didn't read
does
that.
support it.
I didn't read the
I
committee
go right to the
report.
attachment.
I went to the part that counted. And in the attachment is the maps?
The attachment is the recommendations from the sewer review
Right,
committee.
and
And
the maps, okay.
And the maps.
All right. Okay, so on 84, is there further discussion?
Well, I guess what I don't understand about, I'm sorry, is the 18, I mean, it goes number 2 to 18. So it does, like, we'd be approving, if we approved it, we'd be approving it for just 18 and not 2? I mean, it seems weird to.
Well, two Kimball's already in.
It is in the sewer district. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand. So it's just
Directly
pulling over
across the
for,
streets in and adjacent towards Sherburne Turnpike, that's all in. But on the other side, moving away from Sherburne Turnpike, that's not it. So the question is, do you let the district end where it ends right now? Or do you, want to be nice and add one more property?
District.
We've seen this in other areas where you just keep adding one more and one more.
but the people across the street are not on sewer?
The people across the street are,
Yeah.
yeah.
I hope so. They've all built like a ton of buildings there, so I'm saying. I mean, if they're not on sewer, I don't know who is.
They are.
I mean, I don't really have a problem with it, but if you're saying it doesn't meet the criteria then that you all follow, then I'm comfortable with that.
Please, Jason.
We try to really look at that criteria. To hit 9, we're trying to balance, water quality issues with development.
and it's 50% or 2/3 vote at town meeting. So town meeting can still vote it through. We just thought we're thinking, are we going to make it a little harder for it to go through or not?
Right.
Because it wasn't a needs area and there wasn't, water issues there. If the town really town meeting wants to let it go forward, it'd be a 2/3 vote. I think that's kind of our thinking.
Okay. There has been a lot of development there in that particular side of the street. It does dip down pretty far.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't see these houses because they sit so low.
Right. I try to really go on the sewer committee, and did it get to that 9 criteria? Did it hit that?
Okay, thank you.
Got to end somewhere.
Okay.
So,
Do we have a motion? I realize we have one written here, but
Make a motion to not adopt.
Second.
further discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, 85. '85, please, Ally. Are you getting there? Thank you. Okay, so this one, 85, the select board did approve this. And it was recommended added to the sewer district by the sewer commissioners.
So we should assume this meets all 9 criteria?
no, it got an 8.
It got an 8?
Yeah, it got an 8 out of.
Yes, there was.
It's in the wellhead protection zone. Which is one of the points, but maybe given extra weight.
Yeah.
Not all points are equal in this system.
There's a book about that.
Not all points are equal.
Well, I think it should be given more, should get more weight.
Yeah.
Motion to adopt?
Second.
Any further discussion? No. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you. 86. This was also approved by the select board. And I'm guessing this has the same comment.
Help us get a new senior center.
Yeah.
Move approval. Without the
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay.
in the year of the senior. Let's get that.
Okay. 87.
Many other problems.
This was approved by the select board and it was recommended by the Board of Sewer Commissioners.
Motion to adopt?
Second.
Just for discussion, isn't this the land that was just, that the land bank just acquired?
It is. It's the Larrabee property.
So what do they need sewer for?
There's a life estate part.
Yes, there's a life estate.
Okay.
There's a life estate, and they also said something about they're going to build some sort of a farm stand over there with public restrooms.
Correct.
Nice.
Yes, I remember that.
Farm stand 40B.
Don't say those fighting words to me, okay? You know I don't like it.
Okay.
Okay, move approval?
Yeah. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, we're getting there.
It's funny we're adding sewer to conservation land now, okay.
It's ironic. Article 88. Now this one,
Did a single resident of Korea Lane want this? Do we have any idea?
I believe so, because that's why Linda Williams is a sponsor on behalf of the residents.
I was under the impression that the people that, when she signed that, no one on Korea Lane, there was not a Korea Lane address on her list, so that's why
Okay.
I was curious about that. Because this came to my attention a while ago, but
I mean, the select board had discussion about it, and they said they just wanted to put it to a 2/3 vote at town meeting. So you effectively didn't rule on it one way or the other.
It's just, I mean, it meets the 9 points. It's in the needs area. And these are the same people who are gonna be living down the street from somewhere between 90 and 150 dwellings, so we're not gonna let them get some more bedrooms for sewer. It just seems mean.
No, I'm not saying that. I just wanted to know why this, why wasn't there anybody from that community that I knew of that supported it? Just would have, if someone's doing
okay,
this
not to edit.
thinking about planning and not, again, we talked about this the other day, if the citizens weren't, or the residents weren't informed about it, it just seemed a
We're
little
voting
odd,
not
but.
to approve it anyway, so it doesn't matter. If we, right?
Oh, yeah, they
No, but
vote.
Steven's saying we should approve it.
Well, yeah, I am saying that.
I know.
mean,
I hear you. I
it
think
is
you're
in
making
the
a good
needs area.
point.
We do have this checklist, and it meets the requisite number of points. And I don't know why we're saying no.
Why did select board say no?
I don't know. I think we're gonna ask.
We're going to ask Libby.
Well, we're trying to remember why it said no.
I couldn't remember why it said no. I remember the part of we're going to put this to town meeting for a 2/3 vote. And I didn't understand that there was a conclusion one way or the other, was my takeaway from watching it twice, which is sad that I
Yeah, if
couldn't.
it's just raising a higher bar, and then there's issues that we don't understand, that's maybe a good enough reason.
I don't remember exactly the conversation, but there was a lot of areas in the map above it and around it that wasn't added. So it just seemed a little, I'm speaking for myself, not the board, a
Yeah.
little kind of picked out.
You
Even
did-
though
it
I
is.
agree,
I agree.
I'm a little more pro sewer. So I just thought 2/3 made a little more sense because I didn't, it was a citizen warrant article, wasn't thought out with our departments. And so
Thank you.
I think that was why I voted that way.
Okay,
I mean,
thank
it's
you.
a long way down there for sewer too, Stephen. It's expensive.
What's that?
It's expensive.
Sewer's expensive?
No, down there, it's way down there. I mean, it's not like they're, but I don't know, maybe they can just go in the force main under the road there.
No, the conversation was that it couldn't, that it would have to go all the way back to,
Go back up and then
Yeah.
get
Then
ejected
come
back
down,
down. Yeah. It's a very expensive sewer, so I don't.
So the select board voted not to adopt.
Correct.
And further questions or discussion?
If these people, if they were given if it was added to the sewer district, it's gonna be at their expense, at the residents' expense to connect?
Usually it is.
Right.
Yeah.
But people do come back and ask for a reprieve, especially, and they get them.
And this particular, I haven't seen a map, so this particular tract does abut a
Maps on the,
sewered area?
No,
no.
it's gonna, what he's saying is gonna abut Surfside Crossing, and that will be sewered. That will be a private sewer, it's slightly
Yeah,
different, but.
so the properties immediately to the north are not in the sewer district, but after that, Sherburne Commons is in the district.
Yeah,
And the properties directly on South Shore Road, so adjacent to these, they also are in the sewer district. And everything across the street is in the sewer district. So
it's just like the residents in the area don't, but the Sherburne Commons and then, yeah.
There we go. Here, that's better. That's a better, if you can see from that far away. It's the red stuff and the blue is already
Oh,
stored.
okay,
yeah,
okay.
blues in
No,
the
it's that
district.
one square, yeah.
It's just that square. It's a square with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
That's a lot
6,
of
7,
properties.
8, 9, 10.
So if we run counter to the select board, we're basically giving these folks,
We're lowering the bar.
yeah, making it a majority, making it a mark.
We're not? No. Oh, so we're just,
8.
If the sewer commissioners vote no, it requires 2/3.
oh, so what are we talking about?
I'm supporting select board on this, fine.
Okay, I was always gonna support the select board anyway, so.
I thought we were
You
gearing
could
up
do
for
it
a
next
little-
year if you really feel passionately about it. But I didn't see Korea Lane on the list, is what I'm telling you.
Well, what was interesting to me is they didn't come to the select board deliberations for it. Maybe they went to the sewer commission deliberations, but they did not come to the select board, the people who would be affected,
well,
so,
that was the sewer commission.
No, the sewer review committee.
yeah. Yeah, different,
Well, that's
yeah,
obviously-
Right, but
Yeah,
it was the
yeah.
sewer committee, the sewer
yeah,
commission.
yeah, I'm sorry, you're right, correct, as always.
Brian,
They're not here, they're not
Nice.
here, we're
I
not.
make a motion.
do we know
not
what
to
percent of
adopt.
the people that
Second.
hook up to the source, excuse me,
We still,
people that hook up to
Peter's
the
still-
sewer system pay for it with their own money? What percent don't pay for it? Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what percent ask for a reprieve?
Well, Your connection to the sewer main is always your expense. The
Right.
question is whether it's a betterment sort of situation or.
I'm not sure that I follow about.
Well, is there a subsidy to hook up if you can't afford it? No, so it's always paid for by the resident.
Wait, that's not,
That's not true. I
that's
agree.
not true.
There is a program.
Is there a loan program?
I thought it was a special rate
For what?
for sewer hookups or some sort of abatement or some sort of.
It depends on when you hook up. And if you hook up within a certain period of time, your sewer connection fee is $500 versus $2,000. That's just standard through the sewer regulations. But besides that,
There is some
is.
some sort of a program.
There is.
I don't know
If
it's
you
a
qualify.
state-funded program that you can
There's a line item in the
apply
budget.
for loans for your connection costs.
that is for septic systems, but it may cover a sewer connection. But it's a loan. It's not a reduction.
Well, right. I just bring it because I think there were some neighbors in Hesse Farm who pursued it anyway. I don't know.
They may have, but it is a loan program. The only other thing I can think of is that there was a kind of a deal on the grinder pumps for the Nantucket Harbor Shimo Plus
Yeah,
connection.
I was going to say either Pulpus or Shimo had a special.
It's not a special rate to connect, though. It just had to do with the grinder pump.
Just the actual equipment, and you bought
Right.
it in bulk as part of the.
Correct. Now, to Peter's question, if you more mean a sewer extension, so when the town is ready to do a sewer extension project like Nantucket Harbor Shimo Plus parcels, that's a big project. And so there was a lot of discussion at the beginning about betterments. And in the end, we all know how that went. There were no betterments. However, there are people in much smaller extension situations who sometimes pay for it themselves because there is no town plan to do an extension. And at this point, they are required to undergo some of the conditions that have been mentioned here. They may have to do a capacity analysis. They may have to do an analysis on who else might, well, that would be capacity, who else might connect at a later time? Is the pipe big enough? What are the downstream impacts? That sort of thing, that they will have to size the extension correctly to accommodate future hookups. I'm not sure what the percentage is, though.
Okay, but like the Habitat for Humanity homes, maybe you can answer. Are they paying to hook up into the sewer? Or is
There
I
are
mean,
certain
They're
groups.
paying
I connected,
something.
I paid for my own connection, yeah, as did all the other neighbors in Hesse Farm. So.
No, the Habitat for Humanity houses.
Certain groups that provide very specific affordable housing units.
And I think you gotta be.
Get a waiver.
The connection fee, it's the connection fee to the system very often does get waived for Habitat or for other.
For
charities.
affordable requirements only. And it's been the sewer connection fee and sometimes more recently the privilege fee.
Okay, I think you were getting at that. You wanted to know if some.
So my point is that all these houses on Coria Lane would be paying for it themselves if they hooked up to the sewer system.
Well, let's just be clear on what hooking up to the sewer
Well-
system means.
Okay.
So if there was a sewer there already, which I guess there is not, they would have to pay the connection fees. The actual construction of a new sewer line over to an existing force main in the area, at this point, for this particular situation, would be at the cost of the private property owners to the specifications put forward by the town.
Okay.
Should be paying for both, their connection plus getting,
My point is the town isn't paying for it.
correct.
You're definitely not paying for it because you're saying no.
Even though you want to say yes.
Who does?
Not anymore. Okay, I think we had a motion and a second while we were still having a discussion. Does that motion and second still stand? Motion not to adopt, and it was seconded? Okay, any further discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
I love talking about sewer. I love it. I don't know why.
She's, now 89. Ally, if you could pull up 89, please. Brian, can we deliberate and vote on this now? For some reason, we haven't up until now. Okay. So this is where I think we were thinking that some people got some money.
I mean,
relieved.
this won't, adopting it will just adopt the provisions. The town manager and I have both talked to the assessor. You have to, it's the same criteria in order to get tax deferrals, and we don't have anybody that currently meets the criteria that would actually benefit from this. But I think, in my opinion, it's good to have it on the books in the event that their situation arises that we have a resident that meets those criteria, to be able to do this if it were an option that was available. But we don't have anyone that would meet the criteria based on, the income is very limited and restricted, and the assessor doesn't know of anybody that we would actually meet this criteria.
Okay, so it's an income criteria.
There's income provisions and restrictions, and it includes all kinds of other things, the value of your home and other things. So it would be very tough, we believe. However, we think it's a good idea to adopt it in the event that in the future it became an option.
Thank you. Any questions for Brian? Do I have a motion?
Motion to adopt?
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay. Okay. I don't have that we ruled on 90, property revaluation services contracts. May I see 90? Ally, sorry. I know you're trying to take notes and do this at the same time. Thank you for your help. 90. 48 was done. Okay. So do you want to? Yeah, I mean.
So I can explain it real quick. So a couple years ago, as part of the Municipal Modernization Act, it changed revaluation services to every 5 years, and before it was every 3 years.
Yeah.
And our contracts with the revaluation companies are currently ending on a 3-year cycle.
Yeah.
And when we adopt this, I would be, as a chief procurement officer, I would be authorized to enter into 5-year agreements for the renewals of these agreements, because we do interim assessments, and then ultimately the revaluation on this cycle. 3 years doesn't actually, they'd be in the middle of the interim assessments, and then we'd have to go out and re-procure the services, and it would really kind of create some potentially difficult dynamics of having multiple firms potentially involved, when that's not really what we would like to have happen. So we would recommend that you move to adopt is that what we want to do, right? Yeah. A motion to adopt, and then this would allow us to enter into 5-year agreements, which will line up with the revaluation cycles for the town.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions for Brian? No. Do I have
Motion to do what that says.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on Chris's eloquent motion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And then I think, Brian, we go back to the front of the, are we doing audit committee now or no? You still want to wait till March for that one?
I think we were going to recommend the audit committee.
Amending the town charter relative to the audit committee. You wanted some time. The last time we brought it up, you asked me if you could wait.
Yeah, I mean, the only question that we had was at the end relative to, you can act on it.
Okay. Thank you. 96, please, Ally. Okay. So basically, the motion is just repeating the change of text for this article. So that sounds like something Chris would do. Any questions in respect of this? I read it ages ago. No questions? Do we have a motion?
And just to be clear, the objections that you had about, looking at Brian, the objections that were raised about, what do we say?
The concerns about having the employees participate within the
Right.
meetings.
Yeah, you're satisfied with all those? Okay.
There are certain open meeting law requirements that would have to be met anyway, so presumably they would have to be met in order for this group to go into executive session.
Okay.
And we were trying to think of when that might ever even happen.
Right. So there's no threat to be concerned about here. Everybody's comfortable. No. That was ambiguous. Everybody is comfortable? Yes.
He's looking for a yes here, Brian.
Everybody is comfortable.
You don't look it.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Do I have a motion? Do we have a motion?
Motion to adopt?
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Unequivocal.
Okay. Brian.
Yes.
So, 4.
Well, I think you actually, okay, you have one, you okay, that we can start there, I can say 115 and 116, I think.
Oh, yeah. Can we do those now?
Fine, however you want to do it.
I wasn't sure we could do 115 and 116 now. I thought we were waiting on those till March.
No, I think the motions have been drafted for those, I've given them. So Article 115,
Oh, yeah.
simply under Mass General Law, when you receive insurance proceeds in excess of $150,000, you need a town meeting, in our case, a town meeting to authorize an appropriation from that. So we actually have a ban outstanding that will be due in May of $848,288, which is the amount that we recovered from the insurance proceeds relative to the sewer force main failure. So Article 115 would simply authorize us to be able to expend the insurance proceeds that we've received and pay down the ban.
Any questions?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Article 116, as we had talked to you during the budget presentations, we were recommending money to go into both the stabilization and the capital project stabilization. And through my own mistake, these are both put here because I inadvertently left out an article for capital project stabilization. But in talking to John Giorgio, he said we could do both of them through this because they're both authorized under the same statute or chapter of Mass General Law. So we're recommending that in the motion that $500,000 from free cash be deposited into the regular stabilization, and as well $500,000 from free cash go to the capital project stabilization fund.
Was that originally 750?
It was, and then due to some other changes that we reduced it to 500,000.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for Brian?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, back to 4. Wow, that was very good, Ally.
So we have all of the amounts which we did discuss at the last meeting. If you would scroll down just slightly on that, Ally, thank you. What we've done is relative to the solar rebate program, because there is Article 71 has a language change on the advice of council, we actually put an asterisk which says subject to the proposed bylaw amendment under Article 71, so people will know, because we would merge those if that was approved as well and take that. Actually, one quick thing in reading this, when you approve this, I would ask that I'm going to explain to you, purchase of aviation fuel, and then that was changed for the last year, the fuel revolver to and fuel farm maintenance. So when you make the motion, just know that I will give the town manager a corrected copy to have and fuel farm
And
maintenance
fuel farm maintenance on that
in compliance
line.
with the change in the bylaw
Okay.
last year.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, Brian?
Motion to adopt?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay. 16, can we do 16 now?
Can you bring up the cleared motion, and I did talk to the town manager, there may be some, I'll go through what the changes were from what's in there to the article that was finally cleared with bond counsel today and John Giorgio.
Perfect.
Okay, scroll, no, that's not the right one, so.
No, it's fine. Yeah, it's not helpful.
I actually can read it really well. Doesn't bother me at all.
Must be the dental work.
It's better than trying to read four things in front of me.
It's actually blurry.
It is blurry.
It is blurry, yeah.
Oh, yeah. But I can read it. I'm not saying it's not blurry.
I thought you were trying to make me feel like that was looking good, because it's not.
Oh, no, it's completely blurry, but I can read it. That was the point I was, you asked could I read it, not if it was blurry. Okay, now that we've solved the TV issue.
Are you sending me a different version?
Yeah, I'm sending the final that was in there.
Oh, in which case I have to go to my laptop anyway.
850? 22, 822?
No, it's actually I'll take you through it and how you need the numbers.
Hold on a second, I can get to it. Whoops, not that one. Warrant, latest warrant. Boom. No, I do not want the links. I don't link to anything. I don't know what it is. Page what? Article 16. Just can't get through this very fast.
Stephen, do you know all the developments going on down Low Beach Road, well, off of Low Beach, are those all tying in Wisconsin sewer?
They're not.
Those are all septics?
Those are all septic right now, but the proposed sewer extension to benefit the town's police housing or whatever that is down by we call it the Loran housing, I guess.
Loran housing.
That's all outside of this, so the idea would be to work with the private developer to tie into the sewer that we're installing.
I have the numbers here. Do you need, or you have them as well?
Coast Guard houses in well sewered.
There's a change in one of them. I'm sure it's voted correctly.
Yep.
So I don't, wait, is Coast Guard housing different from what the police chief was here talking about?
I believe so.
If you take the right when you get there, I think there's one sewer, the town water, I mean, Wisconsin water.
I mean, the sewer company is right there.
Oh, yeah, it's 4 million instead of, on the airport? 4030, 250 instead of 6123250?
Oh, so they're in the district, just not high.
Okay, so this, there was a comment from the town manager about the airport, the AIP. It's actually, so we changed it to supplemental funding to Article 20 of the 2018 annual town meeting. If we can scroll down so I can keep reading. For costs associated with the security system upgrades, because this is supplemental funding, it actually only needed to be $4,030,250.
Okay.
Not the
Six,
6,123 was the full project.
Yeah.
There's small changes, there was small wording changes from bond council that you didn't, this is the final approved version pending any review by the town manager for any grammar changes that bond council has incorrectly applied. And format changes, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But the totals all agree and tie out to the new values with the changes, so.
Okay,
The totals that you're voting are correct.
okay, thank you. Any questions for Brian or Libby? No? Do I have a motion?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. And then 71, right, Brian? I'm sorry, 71,
Okay, sure. I forget what 71 is.
bylaw amendment finances?
Okay, yep. So this is the bylaw amendment that we talked about for the operational adder. We're changing the name from solar rebate to municipal aggregation operational adder. This is a small operational adder that goes on the alternate energy delivery company that we have, the municipal aggregation program. Can you scroll down or up a little bit? And then, so what we're doing here too with the use of the fund is, it used to be only for solar energy systems. We're actually adding and authorizing potentially anything that's outlined in the municipal aggregation plan that we have, which will expand the ability of residents to participate in the program, because it'll go to like battery backup systems and things of that versus just solar. So and then we're changing it obviously to select board from Board of Selectmen so that it's consistent.
Okay, thank you.
We don't give rebates for electric car charging stations, do we?
I'd have to look. If it's part of the municipal aggregation plan, we can. I don't remember every single use in there, but the energy coordinator would be able to
Lauren Sinatra.
direct that, answer that question better than I can.
Any further questions for Brian? No? May I have a motion?
Motion to adopt.
Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
Now, Libby, your turn. Everybody gets a turn. The real estate that are select board real estate articles, 99 through 104. Surfside Road, Orange Street, Liberty, Hatch Circle. Ken did not give us anything on those that I'm aware of. He gave us the other stuff, which we went through. And I wasn't sure if he was splitting up citizen versus select board. But we did not get anything on those yet.
Evidently, that is what he did.
Okay.
I can attempt this a little bit, but he's been the lead on it. 99 would be, this is something that the board's been talking about for quite a while now. This is property on 24 Surfside, which is adjacent to the school
Okay.
property, and they have indicated an interest to have it become part of their overall campus. So this would be a combination of purchase and land exchange. And I guess I would have to get you a map, but the purchase is $370, Brian? $370,000. That amount would come out of the proceeds from the sale of land account, and it would be offset by a couple of parcels in the Surfside area off of Nantucket, maybe. I'm going to have to get you what those parcels are.
Okay.
The parcels, so the property owners of 24 Surfside will be given cash as well as 2 parcels of land elsewhere in exchange for this property, which is considered very necessary for future school purposes. And the parcels in Surfside area that would be conveyed to the 24 Surfside owners have already been approved by town meeting for disposition.
Okay. In the article itself, there's no transfer number yet, so,
Yeah, I need to, I didn't know it earlier today, but it's, Brian's telling me it's 370,000.
question for FinCom, are you comfortable ruling on this now, or do you want to wait and see a map and the amount in the?
I've seen the map. I thought we did talk about this one.
Yeah, we did. We talked about it before, but we haven't. Yeah, school's getting something in. In which case, do I hear Any further questions for Brian and Libby?
But we don't know what property you're trading? Is that what I?
Yeah, they do.
No,
Yeah, they do.
We do. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where the map is, but it exists because I've seen it.
It was somewhere
Yes.
along the line given to you, but I don't have it right this moment, but I can certainly send it to you.
So what's the FinCom's pleasure on this one?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion?
Yeah, just while we're talking about it, I want to look up the address. So
Okay.
if anybody wants to see it afterward, they can just look it up themselves without having to hunt for the map. So just one second.
Yeah, we spoke about all of these articles before.
Almost. Yeah, but it's between Belvedere Avenue and Wee Weeder Avenue. There's two parcels.
Right. This is the family that lives in the house right next to the school. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't
And-
quite hear you.
Why are we saying 350? I thought that we were paying them a lot. I thought not. Thought they were getting a lot more money than that for that land. When I went to that select board article when it came, meeting when it came up.
So they're getting 370 plus those two 40,000 square foot parcels.
And do we know the value of those two parcels?
We do, I don't have that handy, but it's, not as much as their property, which is why they're getting also $370,000.
Yeah, I think what's not written here, but, you know, just an cursory review of the Surfside the 24 Surfside property.
Yeah, no,
It's like
I'm
a
there.
3 or 4 lot A&R subdivision. So not to mention the opportunity cost, but just the straight value of it.
Yeah, but Wee Weeder and Belvedere, that's like very valuable property too. That's all, that's the only point I wanted to make. I remember when this came up, I'm happy to support it, but it did raise red flags for me because those are prime, they're just very expensive lots. We're not talking about other parts of the island. We're talking about an island that presents a premium. So,
You're talking about the lots that we're giving them in exchange?
yes.
There, we can get you the information, I can have Ken write up a summary, but my recollection is that those lots were valued at less than the 24 Surfside lots, which are, I think, 3 lots
3 lots.
with houses on them.
Yeah, because otherwise we wouldn't be giving them 2 lots plus $370,000. It would be my working logic. Right, so,
Maybe we ought to see the numbers before we go forward on this one.
okay,
I'd feel more comfortable. Sorry, I thought that was the one we're talking about, and then
That would seem to be an appropriate level of diligence to know the math on it.
then I would suggest the same for 100 through 104. So let's just get the,
fine, do them all at the same time then.
yep. I'm just warning everyone that on March 2nd, no one leaves the building till we're done. Just warning.
Hey, I'm coming back from spring break for that, okay?
We're all coming back, Jill. You're not the only one. So all right, we'll hold off on the rest of the real estate articles until the March 2nd meeting. Libby won't be here for them, but Brian will be.
Who's already reviewed these? I mean, in addition to Ken, is the real estate committee, do they do that?
No.
The select board and,
They've approved all these, right? Because I remember that one getting approved, but I didn't see these other ones.
I think it'll be straightforward on the 2nd, to be honest.
Yeah.
And we don't have many left. So with that,
And if we could even just get a memo ahead of time that just
Yeah, that'd be great.
tells us what the math is quickly, then we can just show up and bang them out on the.
is that possible, Brian or Libby? Thank you. Okay.
It was 99 to what, 105?
99 to 104. We already ruled on 105. So we're waiting for, okay, good. Well, I don't want to disappoint anyone, but guess what? That's all we can do tonight.
Oh, we have to end early?
I'm sorry. Very sorry. But I don't have any other business. Does anybody else have any other business? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
And a second? Second. And all in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome.